And I'm going to transition to Dr. Caroline Leaf and introduce my next co-moderator here. And again, once again, to remind everyone that we are organizing this conference in support of a GoFundMe campaign, which has been placed in the chat if you are able to support us. I am very honored to introduce you to our co-moderator, Lina Khalil. Lina Khalil is a wonderful supporter of stories, and she is one of the top businesswomen in the Middle East, rated by Forbes. She's also a partner in Key Capital and an angel investor. So we're very, very honored to have you, Lina, with us. And I'm going to hand over the next segment to you to introduce Dr. Caroline. And if Caroline is listening to me, I just want you to know, Dr. Caroline, that I'm so eternally grateful to you for everything you've done for us. And thank you for being here. And I'm going to go off screen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lubna, very much. We'll wait for the team to find Dr. Caroline on the... Great. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Well, good day and good afternoon from Dubai. I'm all the way from Stories offices in Dubai.
Oh, lovely. I'm in Paris at the moment.
Oh, I love that. I think we have over 50 countries, I believe Lubna said at the beginning. I'll do a small intro if I may, and there's a beautiful video, I understand, that's gonna build on the introduction. So I think, Dr. Caroline, there is a lot of things that I've read about you and I've seen from your work. And, you know, apart from the fact that you're a very well-known pathologist, you have many books on the subjects, and you really have looked at the power of the mind and just the discipline of mind management and how we can harness that. I think there's very little I can say that can bring that together. And I hope through our questions, the audience can just touch upon the amount of work you've done there. But over to the team with the video.
Your mind is something separate from your brain, but works through your brain. And this is very important to understand this, because people think as soon as you say mind, you think brain, and you think they're the same thing, but they're not. And there's such a tremendous message of hope in that alone, because our mind is the thing that we renew. It's something very, very strong, and it's you, it's the core of who you are. With our mind, we build the stuff into our brain. You literally build it like you build a house with bricks. You build a thought with protein bricks. Thoughts have got a tree-like structure, so you can use your love, power, and sound mind to build healthy thoughts or toxic thoughts. And you do that. You choose what you build in your brain. Whatever you build in your brain becomes the roots of your words and your actions. So what you say and what you do is not some random event. What you say and what you do is the result of you using your powerful mind to make a structural change in your brain, which then is the root of your words and your actions. What I did in my study was I taught mind management. 38 years of research, I have developed techniques on how to do that. You have to know how to manage your own mind. You are able to, every 10 seconds, control how you're thinking, feeling, and choosing. That's how your brain is designed. You're wired for love. There is a change in how humanity is pulling together across cultures, across belief systems, across countries, across time zones. We are pulling together, and that is us starting as humanity to operate in love. And I am so excited about that.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you.
What time is it in Paris now?
It is 8:30.
Okay, so we will be on time, I hope. So there's many questions here, but let's start with a playful one. And I think it's something I have actually a fear of pets, but is it cats or dogs for you?
Dogs. Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second there. Dogs.
Oh, it's dogs. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, I think they're the best. They're the best pets. One day
I have two little Shih Tzus that literally control our life. So
amazing. There's a lot in your book about the 5-step methodology, that help manage your mind and change your thinking. And I'm not even trying to get you to help us understand it now, but it would be great for the audience to get a feel to that methodology, because, you know, I'm a single mom. I've lived in so many countries and I'm an entrepreneur, and a lot of things have been just the power of the mind, just overcoming the difficulty. And I relate so much to the work you've done. So it'll be lovely because you've been able to create a process, and that's just amazing. If you can talk us through that.
Absolutely. So, and that's the Neurocycle, that is what it's called now, and it is a scientific system for how you can manage your mind and drive the changes that you need to make in your brain and your body. Because I think where people get very stuck, especially with a lot of the current kind of languaging that's used around mental health and well-being, we think that our brain is everything. But our brain isn't. Our memories are stored in clusters called thoughts, and thoughts are created by our mind. And the way that we create the thoughts with our mind and build them into the brain, that is what the Neurocycle is. So it's based on that science, and I've made something that, in other words, how your mind actually changes your brain and your body, and what the result of that is what drives you. The system of the Neurocycle, which is a 5-step process, I've taken all that complex science and broken it down into these 5 steps. So it's a system. Think of it like Amazon. Amazon delivers anything, anywhere, anytime. It's a system. The Neurocycle, the 5 steps, is a system for how you can direct your neuroplasticity. In other words, how you can direct changes in your brain. And we all want to do that. It's not nice to think we're controlled by our brain, but the effects of life land up in our brain and our body and our mind. So life lands up in 3 places, and the life becomes part of our mind, brain, and body in this 5-step process. So if we can then learn that 5-step process, we can then reverse engineer the things that have happened to us. So you can't change your story, but you can change what it looks like in the network of your mind, brain, and body, and therefore how that drives you. So that's pretty much what it is, a scientific system that anyone can learn. Very simple. You can teach this to 2 and 3-year-olds. And once you get into this as a system and you get into a habit of using it, you can actually then drive how you pretty much what thoughts you want to focus on and what thoughts you want to change, driving the neuroplasticity of your brain and your body.
Great. I think one of the things that we perform really well when we're really focused and we're really in the moment, but many leaders are under a lot of pressure. And I know, like, I'm quite proud of my creativity, but I've done a lot of work around how that just goes all away. My creativity goes to zero when I'm under a lot of pressure. So really, like, applying a 5-step process is very nice when everything is great and you're sitting on the beach and you're kind of, introspecting. But when you're in that kind of high pressure environment, how do you then navigate that?
So such a good question. So very quickly, the 5 steps are, if you think of flying a plane, you've got to prepare the plane. Not that everyone flies a plane, but just think of the process. You prepare the plane, it takes off, it flies, and it lands. So think of the 5 steps as being a complete cycle of preparation, taking off, flying, and landing. And when you understand that as you go through those 5 steps, you're completing a cycle. When you know how to do that neurocycle, you can do it in the moment. So for example, if I'm in a high pressure situation and things are whatever, work, whatever it is, family, I can run through that neurocycle in my head in 30 seconds, in 10 seconds if necessary. I can be looking at the situation. I can be in the midst of a meeting, in the midst of the chaos of life, and apply that over and over to get myself into a place of calmness. So what it does is it helps you to become responsive instead of reactive. It helps you to observe how you are showing up and how people are responding. And the more you do it, the quicker you get at it. So, for example, the first step is to become aware of your emotions, your behaviors, what you're saying and doing, your bodily sensation, and your perspective. So 4 things. So if you're in the momentary situation and you worked up about something, it's to quickly, literally think, okay, I'm frustrated, I'm going to shout, my body's tensing up, my heart's beating, and the perspective is that, oh my gosh, this is happening again. It takes me longer to say it than it does to do it in your mind mentally. then that would be gathering awareness. Now, when you gather awareness like that, with those 4 little statements, you are bringing that concept that's working, whatever's working you up, you're bringing all your wisdom into your conscious mind. Literally, not all your wisdom, but you're accessing the depths of your wisdom. And when we get in a very stressful situation, it's like a whole lot of trees in the road and you can't drive through. So when you go through these 5 steps, starting with this first step, you're starting to clear a pathway and access the wisdom that's inside of us. So once you've gathered awareness, the second step is to reflect, and a focused reflection, not just to blindly reflect, but to focus your reflection. Why am I reacting like this? Why am I feeling this? And you ask yourself those questions and you answer them. So it's why, it's reflecting. If you think of a light and you shine a light through a prism, it goes through white and it comes out in different colors on the other side, the colors of the rainbow. That's what reflect is doing. It's looking for the depth, but it's keeping you focused. You're not going all over the place. It's very focused. It's organized. You're bringing order out of chaos. So you gather awareness of the emotions, behaviors, bodily sensations, and perspective. Then you ask yourself why. Spending, if it's in the moment, a minute or so on each, or 10 seconds on each, whatever your time demand is. Then you do, the third step is a mind storm. The first 2 steps have opened up the access to your wisdom, and they've brought up a bunch of thoughts, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, that are related to the situation, that have resulted in you somehow being triggered by what the person's saying or something like that. So it brings the thoughts into the open, but it also enables you to open your mind. It also creates a vulnerability, a good vulnerability in your brain and your body, in that the proteins start becoming weakened and you can change things. So these first 2 steps put you in a position of power, where you are still going to feel all the stuff, but now instead of being thrown chaotically out there in the midst of a storm, you actually are in control of the boat, for want of a better word. And there's all this great neurophysiology that's working in alignment with your mind, and your messy mind is getting access to your wisdom, and your wisdom is going to be the response versus the reaction. So the third step is to then do a mind storm. Now you can just see what have the first 2 steps brought up. And just think of some words that have come up, whatever pops in your mind. Just let it doesn't have to be organized. It just pops up. And then the next step is to say, okay, well, this is what's happened. Now, what can I do about it now in this very moment? And then the 5th step is a little action that you take. And it may be, I'm going to go to another room. I'm going to not answer. I'm going to just smile sweetly, whatever it could be. And then that gets you through the moment. Now, that's a quick one that you can do. And I recommend people first learn how to use the Neurocycle in the longer version. So it's the same 5 steps, but you do it daily for around 15 to 45 minutes, working on something that is a pattern in your life, which generally comes from potential traumas. And you've had some talk this evening around traumas and so on. So if there's a pattern showing up in your life, there's a reason for it. So whatever pattern is showing up isn't who you are. It's because of something that's been going on in your life. So to find that and to redesign it, because whatever's happened in your life is your story. That's not going away, but you want to restructure that. And you use the same 5 steps, but you're going to do it daily over a period of time. Because to deconstruct down to finding the origin, even if you know the origin, you've still got to process that and then reconstruct it. And to do that does take time. And so that what I've shown from my research, that to find what the pattern source is, it's coming from a thought. Everything comes from a thought. Life's experiences become thoughts. Everything that happens to us goes through our mind and becomes a thought, and those thoughts produce behaviors. So through doing the 5-step daily, you start each day, take about 5 minutes per step, and you once again start gather awareness, reflect, mind storm, recheck and active reach. The only difference with you doing it slowly is you're doing it slowly, which gives you time to write. So in the 3rd step, that's when you would write things down. So instead of just thinking them, you would actually write it down. And so you would work through. It takes about 21 days to deconstruct and reconstruct that thought, about 15 minutes a day. And then you're not finished. You need another 42 days to stabilize that new way of behaving. Otherwise, you're just going to go back to old patterns. So to change a pattern, you need at least 9 weeks, around 63 days. If it's a big trauma, you'll need multiple cycles. And we've all got stuff. This is mind management. We're all always working on something. Everyone's got something they're working on. No one's got a perfect parent. Everything's passed down through generations. We've all got stuff, and then stuff happens. And then the day-to-day stuff. So this Neurocycle 5-step process is a system. Use all the techniques, meditation, all those things you can use within it. Meditation you do just before the 5 steps. But basically the Neurocycle is how you manage your mind as a human daily in the longer sessions to manage a pattern, and then you carry that over into the day and help you manage the day, because your mind drives your brain and your body, and if your mind is messy, your brain and body are messy, and then the output's messy. So this is an ongoing lifestyle that you do.
That's very comforting. I think we spoke earlier with Dr. Gabor, and he was talking about how loss of control is a really big trauma. And I think it's very comforting the way you bring control back to the person. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, but it is practice. I don't think you become perfect overnight. It's
a process.
like
Yeah. Yeah, but it's an organized process. What we don't like as humans is chaos. We like order. And we also all know we've got to work on our stuff, and we all quite often pretty aware of our roots and part of the roots. The thing is, you've got to then choose to do the work. And if you do the work in the correct way, you drive the neuroplasticity, you drive that change, and you get more and more empowered and more in control. Then that carries over to other areas of your life.
It's amazing. So I think this would be a nice moment to kind of talk about, in terms of your journey, have you encountered some transformative moments, some stories that you'd like to share with us that kind of help us? Because it's always like I always say, you know, they give you the diet sheet, they tell you go do a diet, but you still walk to the fridge when you come into the house, and unless someone tells you a story or you can relate to something, it's very hard to cross that line. So it'll be wonderful if you can share a story from your work that can help bridge a little bit of that motivational gap.
Absolutely. Well, there's millions of stories I can share, but a very dramatic story that really got my research going, because I still do research and write books and everything and do constant scientific studies. But what really got me going years ago was working with traumatic brain injured patients and helping them with rebuilding their mind-brain-body network, as well as helping with their emotions, so social, cognitive, emotional, all those things. And the very first student that I worked with was actually someone who'd had a car accident, who'd been completely written off by the neurologists and doctors. And I actually, as a student at that stage, was in a lecture, and one of our professors was telling us back in the 80s, your brain couldn't change. And I challenged that and said, listen, your brain is always changing. We know that now. That's what neuroplasticity is. It's the fact that your mind we have different experiences every moment of every day. Your mind processes the experience and it puts it in the brain and changes the brain and the body. So the memories of an experience are stored throughout your mind, brain, and body. So if that's the case, that means that if we can manage our mind, we can then heal damage to our brain and our body, and heal damage to our mind, brain, body network. So long story short, I started working with a patient that I was a very young student, but it's a very transformative story, who had had a very bad car accident and had gone from being very high functional to nothing. Like, so it's 18 years, 16, 17 at the age of the accident, more or less, and was not functioning on even a second grade level, emotionally, academically. So, and anyway, so I worked with her for 8 months, and she'd been stuck in this sort of very second grade, like an 8-year-old, and she was 17 at that stage. So very emotionally traumatized, because she remembered how she used to work, etc. So we started working on the Neurocycle with her. And within 8 months, not only did she catch up with her peer group, she went on to finish school, went on to get on with her life in university. It transformed emotionally. It was such a massive change. And she'd been written off by the doctors as a vegetable. And this is back in the 80s, you know, I mean, that's late 80s, early 90s. And that was some of the first neuroplasticity research that was actually done in the world. It was this research that I did. And that's when I saw. And then just very quickly, and I lived in South Africa at the time, in the pre-apartheid transition and post-apartheid era. And I spent 3 days of my week working in those areas that were just so challenged and so badly treated by the government and the environment and politics, and seeing people so hungry to learn. I saw that no matter what constraints there are, if you help someone to understand, look, this is your mind, this is how you can learn, this is how you can manage your emotions. This is how you can grow and learn to deal with trauma and that kind of thing. You can change. And I spent years in 25 years working in those areas, and thousands of stories of people that were raped on their way to one of my lectures and sat there for hours just to learn how to learn, and young men that were drug dealers coming and sitting through these 5-hour training sessions and turning into models. And I can tell you so many stories, and that's what inspires me to carry on. We now reach millions across the world, and the stories we hear are phenomenal, that I haven't even met, that are using the Neurocycle, which we now have in an app form, or it's been for a while now, called the Neurocycle app, where people are being empowered to self-regulate and to help themselves. If you can stand back and observe yourself, you can then understand your experiences and your circumstances have contributed, and then you can have the power. You can't control that, but you have the power to decide how you want to change the future. You can't change the past, but you can change what it looks like inside of you, mind, brain, body, and how it plays out into your future.
It's amazing how human capital is really the most important capital.
Most important capital.
Unbelievable. You know, there's a question from Stories, and I think it's kind of timely as we are moving along in the session. And, you know, Stories are setting up a health advisory committee, a mental health advisory committee. And one of the questions really for you is, what's your recommendation that they could implement as they help organizations? What do you think is I think the lowest hanging fruit, or the easiest thing to bring across an organization? High stress, multiple cultures, multiple kind of personalities. What would your recommendation?
I would absolutely recommend that we focus. There's been so much time spent on things like meditation and breathing, and that's all so important. I teach it too, but that's only the beginning of the process. We need to go beyond those and bring in mind management. So coming back to the plane example, if you prepare a plane, that would be the equivalent of, you know, putting the gas in and checking that it's got the fuel and all those things. That's the equivalent of meditation and breathing. It's the preparation we need for neurophysiology. Then you need to go beyond that. The plane needs to take off, it needs to fly, it needs to land. And so mind management takes you through that entire process. We can't just focus on calming ourselves down and then having a technique to deal with emotions that are flying all over the place. We have to actually know how to reconceptualize, restructure, drive the neuroplasticity and make that change. And for me, that's paramount. We need education people need to know how to be empowered to manage their own mind. If you wait for the therapist or wait for the coach, counselor, which we all need, yes, sure, but you live with yourself 24/7. So for me, the most important thing is to help people to understand their mind and how to manage their mind, not just give them techniques, but to actually take them through the entire process of mind management.
Amazing. I think we're up for time. I don't know if you heard, there was some kind of noise that came up and told me off. I better follow the schedule. There are some questions, so over to the Stories team to maybe bring in some of the questions that are online.
A question I have that's kind of been, you know, people who attend conferences such as this, we recognize trauma, we recognize the importance of mental health. It's something that either we've lived through or we've helped people through. As a nurse, when I worked in the public Canadian system, I mean, I encountered it all the time. Now that I've shifted to private practice, something that I'm really encountering that I find interesting is people who say they've never experienced trauma. So they're in middle age, they've experienced their first instance of workplace bullying or workplace abuse or something like that. And so I'm wondering, how do we make it make sense for people who maybe don't understand, or who might see your method and say, I don't need this. This doesn't do anything for me. You know what I mean? And people can pick and choose what they want, of course. But in terms of like, how do we get, I guess, more empathy, more people understanding that a lot of people in the world do need this.
Yeah, I think that it's a great question. And you know, at the end of the day, free will is our greatest thing that we have, and people are going to choose, but people respond to models and examples. So like if I, for example, work with parents, and if you want to help a child, then, you know, model it yourself. do it yourself, show how you're managing. And, you know, that's so a lot of therapists, and I train a lot of therapists and physicians and so on. It's just explain to people how you're using it for yourself. And with the empathy and empathy, as we know, is so important, and we have unlimited empathy. We just got to know how to channel that and make sure that we don't, you know, that we are looking after ourselves so that our empathy can come out. But modeling it is a great way, and explaining stories of people that have used. It's, you see, what people often think is, oh, there's so many techniques, what do I do? And then the majority of people have been told, okay, meditate, breathe, and I am not anti those. They're totally fine. But what they can do is, the research shows, is they can bring a lot of stuff up, and then people are overwhelmed by, now what do I do with these thoughts that I have in my head? All this stuff has come up. How do I deal with this? So that you can use an example of maybe of yourself or whatever, even ask them those questions and say, well, once it's up, we need to be able to unpack it. We've got to evolve, we've got to grow. We can't just keep evolving. And in this, so therefore we need a system, not a technique. And that's what's great about this neurocycle. You don't have to stop doing anything that you're doing. All I'm saying is just put it into the right order that you can rewire the network. That's the key. The key here is this system is how you will change the mind-brain-body network, and therefore what's driving you to function in this way. So if you want to change that, you just need to follow the principles of the system and do whatever techniques you love. If you love to use CBT techniques, if you love to visualize, use all of it, but just put them in the right place, then at least you know that they're working. And that is very powerful.
Hi, Caroline. Yeah, really nice to have this opportunity, so thank you. I'm a reasonably late newcomer to you. I've just been told about you, but I'm really into everything you do and hoping you can help me. My question, sorry, I put my glasses on for my 54-year-old eyes, and it's early down here in New Zealand. I just wanted to know, even though you've kind of touched on some of that already, how you can stay out of negative thought patterns when you've had years of major traumas that have kind of compounded over decades. A lot of it I wasn't aware of, but I think I used cigarettes and alcohol, if I'm honest, for decades to kind of get through life. But now, after probably 40 years and meeting it all head on, I'm starting to deal with some things. Yeah, so really it's just taken a huge toll on my body, and I just want to know how to keep sort of the bitterness at bay, even though you've touched on it with your neuroplasticity and your 9-week sort of steps. I can see that there's something I need to probably look at seriously now. So yeah, it was just basically how to deal with everything that's come in now that I never realized half of it was actually there. So yeah.
I'm very sorry to hear that, and I'm sorry that you've gone through that, but I'm very proud of you for facing it. It's really hard to start dealing with those things that come up. And what can happen is that so much comes up. You know, it's kind of like if there's been a hurricane or something, or a tornado or a huge storm, everything's all over the road, and the trauma's there, the PTSD is stuck inside of that, and it's what's happened to us, and it's wired into the network, because every experience we have is processed through our mind and literally wired into these protein tree-like structures in our brain and into the cells, every cell of our body. And that's why it's embodied. And it's also in our mind. So it's in 3 places, and it's all connected. And so those stories, they also, if you think of trees, the roots of how they connect with each other. And so one thing comes up and another thing comes up and another thing. So it's to deal with all of the mass of the hurricane is to start with the one that is the worst, that comes up, seems to be coming up the most, and to work on that first, because that generally starts to clear the debris. If you start with the little ones, that can then, you can get stuck in those little ones, and it can be very overwhelming. But to work with the big one, and then to start cleaning that up, but you're going to have to give yourself time, and discipline is really important in terms of, I'm only going to think of this. It's generating those things as well. And you have to ask yourself the question, this is the thought. Think of a tree. It's got branches, it's got a trunk, it's got roots. And you've got that same structure in that's like in your brain, and in your body, you've got a similar sort of structure in every cell of your body, but more like a hedge, but it's also got the roots, and it's got the little branches. And then in your mind, it's like these energy waves, and they're all connected. And if you think of it like the energy could be the storm, you know, whatever, a storm cloud. So if you think about that, you've probably got maybe 10 of these storm clouds popping up, or 20, and whatever, but one of them is going to be pulsating more. Which one has a spotlight on it more? Then you start working on that first. and you start deconstructing, going through that process daily that I described, the Neurocycle. I'd recommend you do the app, because the app, I walk you through it, and it's organized. You do this for a certain amount of time, it's daily and so on, and then you follow that process. Very good idea to have some support. I'd recommend that you maybe try and see a therapist or a facilitator or someone maybe weekly, just to help you as you deal with the big stuff, because it can be very overwhelming. Also, just stick to a limited time every day. You'll hear I say in my books and on my app and everything, stick to 15 to 45 minutes. That don't go longer. And if it's too heavy, stop and do some decompression. I've got all of that inside the book and in the app as well. Everything's there. But it's to get order out of the chaos, and one thing at a time. And your mind's going to want to go everywhere, but you'll learn over time to discipline yourself. That's where the fifth step is an active reach. That step is absolutely invaluable for keeping yourself focused on that action, that particular thought, and then the active reach as well get you through the day. So it could be a statement, it could be a phrase. So let's say it's a phrase, I know that I'm feeling chaotic in my mind, but it's okay, I'm going to get this right. It could be a phrase like that, and then maybe you imagine a rainbow. And then as you go through the day, you stop working on it, you stop now, you don't want to carry on all day, and as you go through the day, maybe something pops up and you feel yourself triggered, then you say that statement to yourself, that same statement, and imagine that rainbow. So it re-anchors you back. And so tomorrow you'll work on that. You tell yourself you're not ignoring it, you'll work on it tomorrow. But for today, you've done enough. And that's really important, because with trauma and multiple traumas and things coming up that you've suppressed, it's just like a storm, and you want to try and get a rainbow in the storm. An umbrella in the storm, one thing at a time. Last thing is that any kind of big-seated trauma that you've experienced and you've got used to numbing, that's going to be quite hard to face. So there's a healing journey. Things get worse before they get better. And there's a whole cycle. And that's where in the app, I've got a lot of little lectures to help you understand that. And there's a whole one with little graphs and everything that explain that things will get worse. For example, day 4 can be a challenging day, and day 7 and day 14 and day 36. When you think, hey, I've got it all together, you suddenly see the scope of of your grief or your loss or what happened. So it's to know that the healing journey is up and down. And if you feel worse before you get better, that's okay. That's what's happening. Think of a surgery. You get cut up, you get sore before you get healed. It's the same process. We get so frightened when we see the pain. And that's where the support systems are invaluable. And also the expectation. It's okay, it's normal for me to feel like this. I'm going to go up and down. That's really important that you understand that process. I know that's a long answer, but hopefully it's answered a lot of other people's questions as well.
Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to talk to you, Dr. Caroline. And you definitely have my heart. I've definitely aligned, and I'd love to be able to follow the process. And I think that is going to take a lot of self-discipline, but I'm starting.
Well, here's the key. Your brain is changing every moment of every day, because your mind is changing every moment of every day. So either you control the process, this is for all of us, because it's changing anyway. Either it's changing chaotically, or you can control the process. So you can drive the change. And that's basically what, yes, it does require discipline, but the alternative is a chaotic mind and brain. So then it makes it a bit easier to make the decision.
Lubna?
Dr. Caroline, I want to thank you a million times. You and your team, you've been incredible to work with. I'm so, so grateful for your time and your energy and all of your support. And everyone in the chat has access to your quiz and has access to your Instagram account so they can follow you. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for you.